Hey folks, what is going on? Today we are going to talk about SQL joins. And this is one of the most powerful tools that a SQL database will have. And what it essentially does is lets tables talk to each other. I think in the first class, maybe the second class, I gave you this scenario that you could have a table or a spreadsheet of all school bus drivers in North Carolina, and then a table or a spreadsheet of all people who've been charged and convicted of a sex offense against a child in North Carolina. And you could link those two tables together, join them together or match them together, however you want to call it, on the person's name and maybe the person's date of birth. So you can find every instance where there is the same person who works as a school bus driver, and also he or she was also convicted of a sex crime against a child. You know, that would be a pretty alarming story. And that's what SQL databases, they're called relational databases, that's what they let you do. And here is the general pattern for writing that query. And this is a select all query. Please note that you can also do a select certain fields and then add a group by. But it's select all, and then you list your tables. So from table 1, comma, table 2. You know, your table names like we've always done, but you want to have 2 of them in your from field or your from line. And then you have to add a where line, and that's where table 1 dot your field name equals table 2 dot your field name. And those field names would be something that's unique to the two tables. In other words, it might be a report number that both tables share, so you join them together on a report number, or it could be a person's full name, or there will be some instances in this class where we'll do 2 different ones. So we'll do like table 1 dot full name equals table 2 dot full name, and table 1 dot date of birth equals table 2 dot date of birth. You know, see, because you could have a Michael Smith in both fields, so that date of birth helps you out. So that's the general lineup for your join queries. And down below you see a little explainer where you're selecting what records from table 1 and table 2 are what you want the tables to join on so they can be matched together. And the where field is the common column names that they have. Does that make sense? Well, we are going to look at some data today. It's data from Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police. And we already looked at this incident file, but I'm going to ask you to re-import it into a new database. And we're going to add to the same database a CSV file about victims and a CSV file about weapons. So it's going to be 3 tables, all in the exact same database. And let's look at those tables right now in the CSV format. Okay, I'm going to open up the 3 CSV files that I posted online, and the first one is called incident, the second one is called victims, and the third one is called weapons. So let's check out the incidents file. And we've looked at this one before, and what this is all reported crime in Charlotte in 2018. And this is something that our Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department posts, and I grab it and analyze it for stories and maps. But if we have a complaint number, block number, more street information, the date the crime was reported, location, you remember place 1 and place 2, clearance status, clearance date, and a description of the crime. And there are, again, I think around 94,000 records, give or take, in this data. And it's pretty clean when you import it, because I'm going to leave that up to you guys this class. I already imported the data. I figured we can save some time instead of me walking through the import process, but I already imported it, so I'm going to ask you all to do it on your own. And remember to have this complaint number field or as a number. Save it as a number with no periods after the, or no zeros after the period. So make sure you save it as a number with no zeros after the period. So that's the first one. I'll X that out. I'm not going to save any changes. And then the second one is a victims file. And again, CMBD put this out, and this is much smaller. And you can see it also has a complaint number. And again, save this one as a number when you import it, as well as age, right? And it also has the victim's race, victim's sex, and victim's ethnicity. And this database has, let me see how many records, give or take. It looks like around 80,000 records. And that makes sense because not all crimes have a human victim. Maybe, making this up, but maybe someone vandalized a tree, you know? So that's the victims database. And keep in mind this victim's complaint number right here, that field. Just remember that for me. And I'm not going to save any of this. And the weapons field, or weapons table. It's the third one. I'm going to spread the fields out for you. This one, again, it has a complaint number. In this case, it's called weapons underscore complaint underscore number. And it has a weapon description if a weapon was used. Anything from a handgun to hands and feet. Not applicable. See an other firearm, undetermined firearm. I'm sure we have some knives and shotguns in here. Again, CMPD put this data out, and this file has around, what, 18,000 records. Okay? Now, in case you haven't picked up on it, the three files talk to each other, and they do that on purpose, and they do it via the complaint number or victim's complaint number or weapons complaint number field, depending on what file you're looking at. So that's the field that we can mash these tables together and join them up. So we're going to be doing that, but I'm asking you to create a new database, call it CMPD. So your new database, call it CMPD, and import the three files as they're named, all into that one database. So incidents, plural, weapons, plural, and victims, plural. Okay, I'm going to navigate to my tables that I already have imported. So I'm going to go to SQL Browser for SQLite. Then I'm going to click on Open Database. I don't know if we ever done this because usually we import new ones. So Open Database, I'm going to navigate to the folder that I want right here. And I want you to call this new database that you'll be importing CMPD for Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. So I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to click Open. And once you import your data, this is what it should look like. You should have three tables all in the same database. Incidents, victims, and weapons. And I'll browse the data really quickly. There's my incident data, and you can see how the complaint number is written out. This is how your complaint number should be written out. All unique. In other words, that's 4401 it ends in. This one ends in 4305, 4201. So all unique, and they should be as an integer. Alright, and then we can browse to the victims table, and you can see the victim's complaint number. These aren't necessarily unique, but most of them are, and I'll explain to you that in this case, you see how it all ends in 500. So this crime, whatever it is, I can't tell until I link it to the incident table, but this particular crime had 9 victims. And here they are. One was 51, the other was 22, all the way down to an 8-year-old. And they were all white, and they were a mix of male and female, and they were all Hispanic. see, so this one has unique IDs, but it also has duplicates, and those duplicates all on purpose. You can see this crime right here that ends in 805. That only had one victim. He was 15, and she was 15, a black female. Okay, so that's how the victim should look like. Again, a victim's complaint number is an integer. And then the weapons table should look very similar. The weapons complaint number, again, it's an integer, and it should be unique. Unless someone had two weapons, you know, if he had a shotgun and a regular gun, or a knife and he also punched them, so hands and fists. And then it would have the specific weapon over here. So 3 tables, all in a new database, and your new database is called CMPD. Does that make sense? And I'll click right back, and here's the structure right here. It should look like that. Okay, and then we're gonna, before we join the tables together, let's just write a few queries to sort of explore our data. And one of the queries that I'm interested in, and I think we've written this one before, is just to count how many different types of offenses are in each are in the incident file. So how many different types of offenses are in this file? And this offense is vandalism, this is suicide, theft from motor vehicle, hit and run. So write a query after all your data is imported just for the incidents table that counts how often each description occurs. And I'll do that right now. And this is just to get us a sort of a sense of our data. Remember when I said I like to cast a wide net when I look at data? And this is one of them, because I'm exploring all my data and I'm not narrowing it down by joining it right yet. So we'd have select, and the field name was called description. Of course, we want to count it like almost all the time, and rename it. And it's from our incidents table. And because we have description in our select line, we also have to have it in our group by line. And then we want to order it by the most popular type of crime there is. So order by 2. So hopefully by now, this type of query is second nature to you. Select description. Let's count how many times descriptions each one occurs, and rename that as number of records. From our incidents field or table, group by description, order by 2 DESC, 2 descending. Run that, and there we go. And we remember this from before. You remember how we looked at motor vehicle thefts, and simple assaults were right under it. And there's all our data all the way down to 69 was welfare fraud and purchasing prostitution, and negligent manslaughter, and the description field. We should kill that, but for our purposes, that's fine right now. So there we go. That was our first query. I'm going to save this query as description count, DSC count. Okay, and this is just a little practice before we join all the tables together. I'm going to write a new query, and this one I'm going to take a look at the weapons table. So I'm going to browse data and navigate down to weapons. You can see my description count is right up there as a view. Look at weapons. I'm going to see what type of weapon was the most popular. In other words, I'm going to count all the different types of weapons and how often they occurred. So this query would be almost the exact same as the one that we've just written here, but I'm going to create a new query tab. I'm going to do select weapon, count it, as number of records from my weapons table. And remember, weapons in my case is plural, the weapons table, so make sure yours is plural. And group by weapon and order by to DESC. That should be right. I don't think I misspelled anything, but let's run it and see what we have. There we go. So the most common weapon used in a crime in Charlotte in 2018, because this is 2018 data, was hands and feet. I guess police call that a weapon if it's used in an attack. And that happened 7,590 times. The second most popular weapon was a handgun. That happened 2,400 times. And then you can see a knife, 500. And I'm going to scroll down just to get an idea. Vehicle, they consider that a weapon sometimes. Rifle, a gas or air-powered BB gun, shotgun, razor, asphyxiation, axe and hatchet. So all different types of weapons that are used in crimes. Even a key or lock, that's pretty frightening. And a saw, that's pretty frightening as well. Poison, golly. Okay. And one explosive device, and I guess someone was charged as using a weapon as a drug. Maybe they drugged someone. But I'm going to save this one as weapon count. Save view as weapon count. Okay. Well, hopefully those two are second nature to you. In other words, if I were to say in the weapons field, in the weapons table, count how often each type of weapon occurred, hopefully you could rattle that off pretty quickly by now. But now we're going to join tables. And this I'll walk you through, and hopefully you find it a little bit interesting. So I'm going to navigate back to my browse data and back to incidents. All right. Here's my main data set. And if I wanted to join my incidents table right there with my weapons table right there, I'd link them together on this complaint number. And how do I know that? One, because I have a record layout at the observer telling me these are how the tables talk to each other. And two, you could sort of guess that, honestly. The fields look similar, and you could even give it a whirl and see if they do match up. But in this case, you'll just have to take my word for it. These how the two tables, or actually the three tables that we have, talk to each other. So the weapons field is called weapons underscore complaint number. And the incidents field is just called complaint number. They can have the same name sometimes. They could just be complaint numbers. That's fine. Or they could have completely different names. That's fine too, as long as the data in each field match. So here's how you join the two. Let's create a new SQL tab. So we have a blank tab. And in this case, I want to know all the records that are in the incident table that involved a weapon. All the records in an incident table that involved a weapon, because right now the incident table does not include whether a weapon was involved or not. So I have to join it with the weapons table. And we're going to join all the records. So we start with the select all. All right. And what are the two tables that we want to talk to each other? First is incidents, right there. Then a comma. And then those weapons. And if you were like me, you made both of these plural. And that's important because if you have one as a singular when really the name is plural, then SQL is going to give you an error saying, hey, I can't find this table. What do you mean? So make sure you spell out the tables correctly. So I have from incidents, comma, weapons. Then we want a where. And in this case, it's the table name, so incidents, then a period. And you can see automatically SQLite gives you a list of your field names. And I don't see complaint number right away, but I bet you if oh, there it is, I'm sorry. So I'm just going to double click on it, or you can write it out. So where incidents dot complaint number, so where my table name dot my unique field name equals, you can probably guess what I'm going to type, weapons dot weapons complaint number. So weapons, and then because my field name was weapons complaint number, I need to type that out too. So select all from incidents, comma weapons, from my two different tables that I want to talk to each other, where complaint number in my incident table equals weapons complaint number in my weapons table. So let's see what we get here. There we go. We get around 13,000 rows returned right there. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger for you. Investigate the data. So we should start off with all our incident fields on the left because our incident table was on the left up here. So we should go all the way down to description if it's worked right. So there's place 1, place 2, clearance status, clearance date, case status, and there's description. Now the next fields should be weapons fields. And there's my weapons complaint number right there. And then the next one was a weapon itself. So this table now gives me all the times where a crime happened that involved the weapon, and I did not have that in the regular incident data. This is brand new, and this of course lets me to question the data even more, find out more information so I can write better stories. Right? So let's save this, and I'm going to save it as incident inc underscore weapon WEAP, and that's it. Incident underscore weapon. You can save it to whatever you like, but I know I'm going to be writing more queries off this, so I'm going to keep the original name pretty short. So incident inc underscore weapon, inc underscore WEAP, click OK. And there we go. We joined our data. And that's what relational databases like SQL database managers let you do. They let data talk to each other. But now I can query this data. I can ask this data questions. So let me think of one. Well, what if I wanted to ask my data how many times each type of description, each type of crime involved a weapon? Last time when it was just the incident file, I wasn't able to do that. But I could do it now. So how many times each type of description, each type of offense, or each type of crime involved a weapon? Count how many times. How would you do that? Now the good thing about this now, I'm going to go back to SQL and open up a new tab. The good thing about this now is this relies on the basic select from, where, group by, order by that we've already learned, right? So that's the core in SQL, and that's what we're going to revert back to right now. So select, I'm going to capitalize it. Select what? Select description, because I'm going to count how many times the description involved a weapon. I'm going to count it. I'm going to rename it number of records like I always do. From. Now, what do I want it to be from? I don't want it to be from incidents. I don't want it to be from weapons. I want it to be from our join. So, incident underscore weapon. Oops. Right there, that one. And then group by, description, and order by, I'm going to do 2 descending just to get the highest count number up top. Now you might be asking, well, why didn't I use a where in this line? I didn't have to use a where in this field because all my records in the incident underscore weapons view, this view right here, involved a weapon. So I didn't have to say where. So the where was sort of it was already filtered when I created that view. So I'm going to run this and see what I get. Here we go. So a simple assault involved the most weapons, 7,071. An aggravated assault was 2,500. A robbery, 1,600, and so on and so on. See, there each time that type of offense involved a weapon. So I'm going to save this as inc wep, like we before, description count. See how my names are getting longer, and you can save them as however you'd like, as long as you remember what the data actually is. So I'm going to click OK. Now I'd still write some of this information down, like simple assault involved the most weapons at 7,071, and the most common offense was theft from a motor vehicle. I'd write all that down, but if I'm searching for a story, I may not use the initial queries. I may find a news peg, like if a bunch of gun crimes just happened, I might just focus on gun crimes or crimes involving handguns. But again, make sure that you remember that we're writing this code, but heck, we're in the communications business. So it's important to put these findings into words. Now, Charlotte has struggled with gun crimes recently. We had nearly a record high in homicides in 2017, and 2019 is pretty bad as well. So what about we sort of ignore all the weapons, because punching someone or kicking someone is much different than shooting someone. And what if we looked at just the weapons involving a handgun? So over here. So if I wanted to say, or if I wanted to ask you to count all the descriptions, so each type of offense, and how often they involved a handgun as a weapon, how would you do that? Count each type of offense and how often they involved just a handgun. All right? So the easiest way to do it, let me see if I can grab that, copy it. I'm going to create a new, I pasted that in. I pasted our old query into a new SQL tab. Then just write a where field. Where weapon equals handgun, and make sure to capitalize the H. Alright, so in this case, I'm just doing where weapon equal a handgun, and that should grab just the handgun data for me. Just these right here. So let's see if that works. There we go. So these are records that just involved a handgun. And to fact check yourself, actually, you can add the field weapon up into your select and your group by. So I have description, weapon, and count. Does that look good? And then I'm going to run it. And this is sort of just going to fact check myself. See, I added the field weapon there, and these are all handguns. And in this case, I'm going to order it by 3 descending, because I want to order it by number of records. And aggravated assault used the handgun the most at 850 times, robberies 798 times, then different kind of weapon law violations 296, and so on. So I'd write that down, that aggravated assaults was the most common crime involving a handgun, followed by robberies and weapon law violations. But that's counting all the different types of crimes using a handgun, and it's based off the initial join that we did, incident_weapons. Well, this is interesting. So let's just focus on handguns. One, because a lot of crimes use them. You can see 850 and nearly 800 robberies. And two, because I know it's in the news in Charlotte, and it may be in the news in whatever town you all report for, so you want to follow the news. So write a query based off your incident_weapons view that selects all records in which a handgun was used. And we can use that result to then narrow down even further. So write a query based off your incident_weapons view that selects all crimes all records that involved a handgun. And I'll do that now, and we can use this later on. So I'm going to add a new SQL tab, select all from incident_weapon, because we're querying our join. Where weapon singular equal handgun. Pretty simple. This is actually one of the first types of queries we learned, and it's a very basic but very helpful one. This cuts out all records where a handgun was used. And I'm going to run it. There we go. 2,476. So that could be another sentence, without even scrolling through the data, that in 2018, nearly 2,500 crimes in Charlotte involved a handgun. I'm going to save this one just as handguns. And you can save it as whatever you want. But now we can question this data, and heck, we can even join it to our victims table as well. But before we join it to the victims table, what else might we want to find out about where handguns were used in crimes? So we already looked at the description for the most part, right? And we found out that 850 aggravated assaults involved a handgun and around 800 robberies involved a handgun. Well, maybe we want to look at clearance status. That could be interesting. Or place could be interesting. Let's actually see how many cases that involve the handgun are still opened. You know, that affects the victims because they want closure, they want justice, and if it's still open, you know, that we could hold CMPD accountable for that. So let's count how many were open, how many were cleared by arrest, and all the other victim chose not to prosecute, all the other fields in there. So I'm going to create a new SQL tab, and I'm going to select clearance status. I'm going to count it. And what do I want to query? I don't want to query incidents. I don't want to query weapons. I don't want to even query incident_weapons. I want to query the handguns. From handguns. That was the most recent view that we just saved, and it include only crimes that involved a handgun. And then I'm going to group by clearance status, and I'm going to order it by to descending. There we go. So select clearance status and count it from the view, which is handguns, which I kept narrowing it down. And this is the sort of the most narrow view that we have currently. And I'm going to group by clearance status and order it by to descending. Let's see what we get. There we go. So of the roughly 2,500, I think there were 2,500 crimes involving a handgun, nearly half, 1,200, were cleared by arrest. But this is also interesting, that 1,100 are still open. You know, that's a lot of cases. Granted that it was just in 2018, they may still be working on the case, but that's a lot of cases that the perpetrator is still on the streets and the victim has yet to get justice. So I'd write something like that down as well. Now let's focus on those open cases. And as you're looking at this data, or as you're watching the video, I'm sort of in my reporter mode right now. That I didn't know exactly where this class was going, but those open cases sort of piqued my interest. So I'm going to ask you to write a query that queries your handgun view that selects all cases that are still opened. And we're going to use that one, and we're going to eventually join that result to our victims table to find out who are the victims of handgun crimes who are still waiting for justice because the case is still open. But before we join it, write a query that selects all records for open cases based off your handgun view. Does that make sense? Now this is a little bit tough to explain, but hopefully you're following along. So I'm going to create a new tab, and I'm going to do select all from handguns. So I'm selecting all records from handguns where I think it was clearance status, that's what I wanted, and I'll double check that, where clearance status equals quote unquote open. That should be right, but I'm going to check that real quick. Yep, you can see my clearance status right here and open right there, and I want these 2,700 records in my own view, in a view all by themselves. So I'm going to run that, and you can see I get 2,700 right down there, so that's good. It's a little confirmation. And I should have, if I scroll over, all handguns. That's all they are. It's just handguns right here. And you can see a lot of them are robberies and aggravated assaults. We have one vandalism. I'm actually going to order it by description just to get a look at what kind of crimes we're looking at. Order by description. Then run it. And scroll back over. Starts with A's, aggravated assaults. A couple of drug violations and rapes. Sodomy, intimidation, kidnapping, murder, a couple murders, and robberies. So these are all open cases that involved a handgun. And it's all records from our incident table joined with all records from our weapons table. Okay, I'm going to save this one as handguns underscore open. So open handgun cases. Now what I'm interested in doing is taking this data and linking it to our victims table. Now I could have started off by linking incident to weapons, and then my incident underscore weapons table to victims, and narrowed it down that way. But we started asking the incident weapons data questions, and now it sounds like we're mainly focused on just open handgun cases. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to join it to the victims table to find out who are these victims of these cases that are still opened. Okay? Okay, so let's join the two by opening up a new SQL tab. And I'm going to select all records from our one view and our one table. And our one view is called handgun open. So all our open handgun cases. And the table that we want to join it to is called victims. Right? So select all records that are going to be in both the handgun open view and the victims table. Where handguns underscore open dot. Now I can use two different things. I can use dot weapons complaint number, or I can use complaint number. And because complaint number is the main table, because it came from the incident table, sort of the backbone of this data, I'm going to use complaint number. So where handguns underscore open dot complaint number equals victims dot victims complaint number. Now let's go over that real quick before we run it. Select all records from our open handgun cases, so that view, and our victims table, the table that we imported but have yet to look at. Where our open handguns view, that complaint number, equals our victim table's victims complaint number. So where there's two columns and those unique IDs match. So let's run it. And if everything worked out, we should start with the complaint information on the left, and then go to our gun information or weapon information, and then go to victim information. So we start off on complaint number, and we have the location, the two place fields that we're used to. They're all open. Remember, we did a clearance status equals open, and they should all involve a handgun as well. So scrolling over, they all involve a handgun. That makes sense, right? Because we joined it with only open handgun cases. And then we go to our victims, and this is the victim data. There we go. So congrats, you just joined your second table, right? And I'm going to save this one because I want to query this. I want to find out who are the victims of open handgun cases that still have yet to get justice. So I'm going to save as handguns open, because I already have part of that, and then victim, VICT. Handguns underscore open underscore VICT. Okay. Now I can query this data, and I can find out, the average age of victims from handguns that with still open cases, or the race, or the gender, or their ethnicity if one is listed. But let's look at the victim's gender first. So I'm going to create a new tab, select victim's gender, which was called victim underscore sex. There it is, and count it. As number of records. From, now this might get a little tricky, but you have to remember where you got your data from, and this one is going to be handguns underscore open underscore victim. And since something is in your select line, it has to be in your group by line. victim underscore sex, and let's order it by the count. Order by 2 descending. Okay, let's run it. So, around 1,200 of the victims of open handgun cases are male. Around 835 are female. That's interesting. I honestly thought it would be more male because usually it's male on male violence. But I'd write something like that down as well. And I'd also write some of our findings from here. You can see we have a total records of 2,077 victims. And I'd write that down, both of them, in my notes file. Now I'm going to save this as, how about handguns open victim count. Handgun opens victims count. So you add a count after that. And I'm going to write the same query, but I'm going to swap out the victim's sex for the victim's race. I'm going to see what types of races have the most open handgun cases. So let's try that. So select victim race and count it. Then we need from handgun open victim, group by victim race, and order by 2 descending. So now I'm selecting just the race of the victim from our merged tables, all 3 smashed together. And because I have victim race in the select line, it's also in my group by line, and I'm going to run it and see what we find. Wow, okay, so most of them are black. This is, I think we had around 2,100 total crimes, and look at that, close to 1,400. So probably 2/3, if I'm just doing the quick math in my head, are black. So I'd write something that down, and another 624 are white. Let's do another one. So create a new SQL tab and find the average age of handgun victims who are still waiting for justice, whose cases are still open. So the average age. So we'll select, and remember the average age. We don't want to necessarily select a field, but we want to do math to a field. So it was AVG victim underscore age. And I'm going to browse back to my data just to make sure that that's what I had named my fields. So victim underscore age. So select average victim underscore age from our handgun open victims field, or victims view I should say. And that's pretty much all I need. I could rename it, and I'll do as average age. So I'm selecting and I'm averaging the age of all the people in my handguns open victims table, and I'm renaming that field as average age. Let's run that. And because I saved that victim's age as a number when I created my database, I can see that the average age is 31 for all open handgun cases. And I could add the race as well. So why don't I do that just on the fly, where victim underscore race, and since the African Americans were the most often ones with cases that remained open, I'm going to try that. So we had 31 for everyone. Let's see if the average age for black victims is any different. I'll run that. 30. So So not bad. I'm going to switch that out for white and see if white's any different. 33. Okay. Well, I'd write something like that down as well. Maybe not the average age for blacks or whites, but just the average age in general. And I'm going to save my main view, my main query, without the race listed in the where line as handgun open, because these are open handgun cases with the victims included, and age. Open handgun, or handgun open, victim age. Okay. Well, let's write one more, just for practice. And I'm going to go back to my browse data and my open handgun victims table, because that's what I want to look at. And what looks interesting where we might want to grab. We have average age. We could find the ethnicity. But why don't we break down robberies? I think they were down here, right? Robberies. Let's break down the race of robberies. So count how many white folks, black folks, American Indian, Asian folks were the victims of robberies using a handgun for open cases. So I think we can do that. I'm going to go execute SQL. I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to select victim's race. Remember, victim underscore race. And I'm also going to select description. And I'm going to count them and rename that as number records from our handgun open victims table. And I need a where in this case, where description equals robbery, right? And I think it was just ROBBERY. I don't think there was anything else included, but I'm going to browse data just to make sure. I'm going to go to my description by scrolling over. I just want to make sure it was robbery. Yep, just robbery, not robberies or anything else. And because I have something in my select line, I need those fields to reappear in my group by line. Group by victim underscore race, that pops up, and description, that pops up. And let's order it by 3 descending, because my count is my third one over. I have 1 for race, 2 for description, 3 for count. So what this is going to tell me is the race of the victims for unsolved handgun crimes that were robberies. I'm going to run it. There you go. So whites were actually the race of most victims that were not solved, and blacks weren't too far behind, followed by a couple unknown Asian and then American Indians. And I'm going to save this as handgun open victim rob race. Handgun open victim rob race. Again, you can save it as whatever you want. I'm pretty literal with the way I save mine, so that makes sense to me. Does this all make sense to you? Joining tables? I hope it does. I'll go back over them again next class. We'll join tables, but I also wanted to assign some homework to let you guys to practice joining tables yourselves. Okay? Before I get to the homework, I wanted to review our findings. And this is what our queries showed. In 2018, nearly 2,500 crimes in Charlotte involved a handgun, an observer analysis found. Police have closed around 1,200 of those cases, but another 1,100 remain open, according to Charlotte-Mecklenburg police data. Data showed that there are some 2,000 victims of handgun crimes that police have yet to solve, About 1,200 are men, 2/3 are black. About half of the unsolved robberies involving a handgun, half of those victims were black. The average age for victims of handgun crimes that remain open is 31. Aggravated assaults were the most common crime that involved a handgun. 850 aggravated assaults used a handgun. About 800 robberies used that weapon. Not bad. And then we go out and we interview people who were victims of these crimes. We interview people maybe in prison for these crimes, the police department, community advocates, and we put this together for a pretty good story, I think. Okay, here's your homework. Create a new database in SQLite and call that database homework. Import the two tables that I posted into that database. One of the tables is called homework income, and the other one is called homework food stamps, and these are CSV files. Write a query that joins the two tables and save your join as income food stamps.